The February 5th, 2019 meeting of the Scott County Board of Commissioners to order. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Colleagues, the agenda's been distributed. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move along to the minutes of the January 15th, 2019 County Board meeting. They've been distributed in your packets. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Madam Chair, I'll move approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the January 15th, 2019 minutes. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next, we're to the point on our agenda for recognition of interested citizens. If you have an item that is not on the agenda and you would like to address the board, now is the time. There's a limit of 5 minutes per speaker or item. So if you're here to speak during this part of the agenda, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John Iser. If I could get the little view thing, I'll get myself done in 5 minutes.
There you go.
Okay. Is that good? Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So last month was Martin Luther King, and he basically said an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And justice is upholding the law. It's a promise made by men and women to the people they represent when they take and file an oath of office before assuming the duties of office within the time period prescribed. So I've been asking this question for 6.5 years. What is the time period prescribed to take and file an oath of office before you vacate the office? And that's the Minnesota statute. And I can't get an answer to this question on how to uphold this law. Yet the people I see act as if they know the time period prescribed. What do I mean by that? Well, I was here on January 8th, and I watched a number of you take and file an oath. And in fact, Ron even looked at me and he goes, "Did you see me take my oath?" So I'm assuming he said, "Did you see I followed in the time period prescribed?" That's what I thought. And I guess the rest of the people in the state of Minnesota took and filed on that date their oath of office before they assumed the duties. So I told you I've tried to get an answer to figure out this question. I've gone to the public servants who took an oath to uphold this law, and I've been ignored. I've been ignored by those public servants that hold the office in our justice systems, specifically in the lawyers who are county attorneys, district judges, appellate court judges, and Supreme Court judges. The lawyers represent our justice system, so an injustice by them is a threat to justice everywhere. And then I said, well, what do those particular people have in common as elected officials that maybe you five don't? Well, they're all members of the bar club, the bar association, and they're all lawyers. Ron can't run for that office unless he's a licensed bar attorney. We can't have a county attorney unless they're licensed. Doesn't matter, Mike made law for a number of years, but he can't run for that office. He can't run for a judge. So, and they represent less than 1/10 of 1% of our population. That's a lot of power. So, within that, I just discovered, wow, that is a lot of power held by a small group of people. Less than 1/10 of 1% control the judicial branch, the executive branch, and in fact, the people who actually publish the laws and prepare the bills for the legislature are 14 bar attorneys out of the revisor's office. That's a small group of people. So then I discovered, even if Ron wanted to try and help, let's say I've persuaded him, Well, he's going to have pressure because he can't run for that office if he doesn't have a license. His license is at risk. So Ron can't even really help me if he gets pressured by that small group of people, even though he was elected by the people. So I'm trying to come back to you 5 people because you're not bar attorneys, you're not lawyers. And last time when I was here, you said, hey, I don't have jurisdiction. But you did take an oath. You made a promise to uphold the law. And there is precedence for this. There is precedence for this, and I have one more slide and then I'm done. And the precedence is Governor Perpich asked his Attorney General at the time, Warren Spanis, what is the time, when do you have to take the oath? Because at that time we had 2 Supreme Court justices coming in to office, and it was a holiday. And Warren Spanis addressed that question, but it was written by the executive branch to them. And I'm wondering, would this body be willing to ask for me? What is the time period prescribed? Because you could do that, and I have a copy of Warren Spanis's letter here for you, but you guys could ask that question. You could do it by letter, or you could actually do it by a writ of mandamus or writ of prohibition, and you could ask that question. And at least get me a definitive question of what is the time period prescribed? Because Warren Spanis did not address it in his letter at that time, because he said he wasn't asked. But we have a law, and it says time period prescribed. And I'm wondering, would you consider putting it on your agenda today or in future, but would you as a body consider formulating and asking that question? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miser.
And here's a copy.
Any other interested citizens who'd like to approach the board? All right, if not, we're going to move on to new employee welcome. We have 4 new employees and 1 new intern here today to introduce themselves. I'd like you to come up, if you would, to the podium. Tell us your name, the department you're working in, and where you came from last. That would be great.
So my name's Keenan Reynolds. I am a senior at Shakopee High School. I'm here with the Office of Management and Budget doing the internship for them. I was born in San Diego, California, moved multiple times, Marine Corps family, and I'm really excited to be here and hopefully do some great work for Scott County.
Thanks, Keenan. Good to have you.
Hi, I'm Himani Joshi. I'm also senior at Shakopee High School. I'm here as a student intern. I have some previous work with Scott County Extension Committee, so I was really interested in working with Ms. Christine Harder through quality improvement and hopefully making a bigger impact in the community as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Bays. I'm new to the library system. I'm going to be at the Prior Lake Library, managing there. I have a background in county library service. I've been mostly focused on teen services and over the last 12 years, and also very engaged in the Minnesota Library Association. So working on where libraries fit in community and what it means to build community around spaces like libraries, where people come together to explore ideas, have conversations, and engage in education and all the things that make community important places. Thanks.
I'm Julie Jacobson. I was born in Michigan, and most of my work experience has been in some sort of education field, mostly early childhood, especially reading and literacy, and I have recently been hired at the New Prague Library. I'm very excited to start this. It's a little bit different than what I'm used to, but excited to see the change and working in Scott County. It seems like a really great place to work in.
My name is Fahd Al-Hamidi. I was born and raised in Iraq. I was working with the U.S. Army back there. I came to the United States 2013. I did some security. Now I was hired recently with Scott County Sheriff Jail, and I'm looking forward for this opportunity and play a role, and just looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Javier Soto. I'm originally born in Mexico, raised here in Chaska, Minnesota. In 2013, I I enlisted in the United States Army. I was stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky with the 101st Airborne Division. In 2017, I got out and started working for the Tennessee Department of Corrections at a riverbed maximum security institution in Nashville, Tennessee. I decided to come back home, and now I'm here working across the street at the sheriff's office, at the sheriff's jail, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
You.
Commissioner Beer and I had the opportunity to meet with these folks before the meeting. It was a great meeting. I'm really excited about these new employees and their decision to choose public service to work for the people of Scott County. Do you have anything to add to that?
Our newest hands and feet of Scott County.
So-
The best mouthpiece we can have is our employees.
So welcome and thank you for being here. All right, next on the agenda, we're going to have a presentation from the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District. Mr. Steve Manweiler is here and will introduce his colleagues and give us a report. I believe Commissioner Wolf and Commissioner Beard have been involved on representing us in your organization. So welcome and thanks for coming down to Shakopee.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for having us. Actually, before I introduce two other employees from Mosquito Control who came with me, who may be able to answer questions I can't answer, just got to say it's nice to be in the room with somebody else from California. I grew up in Anaheim, so hearing somebody from San Diego was really nice. And on the other hand, when I came to Minnesota, I talked to all my business associates. I came from private industry before I was at Mosquito Control. Everybody gave this area a thumbs up, and they were right. But make sure that most of the people in the country think it's Siberia, so they'll stay away and leave it nice for us. Anyway, before I start, I'd like to introduce Mike McLean, who is the Public Relations Coordinator at Mosquito Control. And when you talk about the voice of your agency, Mike is a major voice of our agency. All of our employees, like all of your employees, are the voice of our agency, but Mike is the major voice. Adam Fry is a field operations supervisor in our Jordan office. He provides service to your citizens, so he's one of the people who's the boots on the ground, and it's the people that he works with, manages, who are out dipping for larvae, doing the adult treatments and all of that, providing service. Further ado, let's see if I can make this work. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because a lot of this is a review of what you've heard before, and they're basically some highlights from for this year, and I'll emphasize those. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the governance, about our funding and budget for 2019, a very brief review of mosquito biology and control, a little more detail on disease prevention, and one disease in particular, there is some new news which will help us deal with controlling that disease in the future that I only recently heard about it. It was last week in Michigan that I heard about it. And finally, some of our plans for 2019. I think everybody here is aware that the Mosquito Control District provides service to the 7-county metro area. We are governed by a board of 18 county commissioners. I'll show you the list of our 2019 commission shortly. We serve 3 million people in the metro area, and we have extensive history on 70,000 wetlands and 30,000 woodland habitats where we provide control. We focus mainly on larval mosquito control. They're in the water as larvae, they can't get away, so it's easier to get to them, and then augment with adult control. Here are the commissioners who are overseeing us, helping us manage our program in 2019. We have 2 newly elected commissioners, one from Hennepin County, Angela Conley, and one from Anoka County, Mandy Meisner, who will be going through some orientation to learn more about mosquito control. We also have 2 other commissioners who used to be on the commission, were off and are back. In Hennepin County, that's Jan Callison, and in Ramsey County, that's Jim McDonough. Everybody else has been on the commission for several years, so which is really nice because then there's enough history, we all understand what we're talking about. Last year I showed you a really complicated slide with funding and multiple years of history and all of that, which was a big tongue twister to explain. I tried to simplify it this year, just looking at how have things changed since last year. So if you look at the maximum levy authority of the district, because of the economy going so well in 2019, it's quite a bit higher than it was in 2018, about 7% higher. Our commission has been working with us for several years to balance our levy, in other words, our funding, and our expenditures and our resources, both our reserves and our budget, with small continuous levy increases each year for the last 4 years, and that'll continue for a couple more years. There's a historical precedent for that. In 2005, the district embarked upon a service expansion program. We built up our reserves. The expansion program was put into basically retirement in 2008 because the economy situation changed. In 2014, 2015, and 2016, we had exceptional service demand years because of the heavy rainfall. We spent down our reserves. Before that time, our budget had also been put above the levy to spend down those reserves to get everything in balance. Well, the reserves went well below where they should be, so we're working on bringing our reserves back up to where they should be and balancing our budget and levy. That's why you see a 2% levy increase and a 1% budget increase. The primary budget increase was dealing with wages, health care, and those kinds of issues, things that you've got a lot of experience with. Well, I'm an entomologist by training, so maybe I'm a little better about explaining about bugs, but I've been into bugs since I can remember. Mosquitoes develop through something called complete metamorphosis. Just think about a butterfly. Everybody's used to butterfly, starting as an egg, turning into a caterpillar or larva, then turning into a pupa within a cocoon where it transforms into the adult. Mosquito development follows exactly the same route. However, the eggs are laid either in wet soil or on water, depending on the species of mosquito. All the larvae live in water. The pupae also are in water, and only adults then fly out later. Don't worry about all the names on this slide. The real take-home message from this slide is there are many different important species of mosquitoes. At the top are 4 that are major pestiferous species, and then at the bottom left are 6 groups of mosquitoes that are disease vectors. The take-home message here is each of these species of mosquitoes has a different biology. They're found in different places at different times of the year. It's not as complicated as it sounds, but what it means is we need to use different surveillance methods to find out where the larvae of the different mosquitoes are. We need to know when to conduct larval surveillance, and that way we can make decisions about what kind of control operations do we need to conduct to keep these mosquitoes in check. As I said earlier, larval control is the mainstay of our program. We use 3 products for larval control. 2 of them are biological. BTI is a bacterium that was isolated in Israel in the 1960s. It's very specific to mosquito and related flies. It's coated on corncob granules. That's what is being put into the wetlands when you see the helicopters over the wetlands. The second biological is called spinosad. It comes from a different bacterium that was isolated in Jamaica in the late 1980s. It's been used in agriculture because it's more broad spectrum, except for mosquito control. The reason it's specific is the formulations we use go into the wetlands, release it into the water. Mosquitoes are more susceptible to it than the other things in the wetlands, and it's a long-lasting formulation. The material itself falls apart. The active falls apart in the water, but a slow-release formulation replenishes it. So we can use this in areas that we have known histories of high levels of mosquito production. The final one is, whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. The final one is, it's called a biorational. It's not a true biological, but it is related to an insect hormone that controls development. There are 2 hormones, If one of them is high, the insect grows and remains a larva. When it's time for the insect to become an adult, so it has to go through the pupal stage, a different hormone level increases, and that controls the development into the pupa. Methoprene is a mimic of the hormone that keeps the mosquito in the larval form. So it also is a long-lasting formulation, a slow-release formulation. It disrupts the metamorphosis of the mosquito, and they die as pupae. We augment larval control with adult control. You'll see people with backpacks. You'll see the trucks every once in a while. There's a lot less of that, the larval control. If we can conduct enough larval control, it's very effective at keeping the mosquitoes down. I'd like to go into mosquito-borne disease a little bit. Lacrosse encephalitis is a children's disease primarily. The mosquito that transmits it in the wild lives in tree holes, but if you have a lot of old tires around your house or your farm, that mosquito can develop in water that's in those old tires. So we do a lot of work in wooded areas to look for the adults. We also do a lot of work to get rid of the tires. And when there is a case, the health department will let us know where the case, what's the address of the case. And a lot of times we'll go there and find a lot of tires so we can get rid of it and eliminate it. Jamestown Canyon is the newest mosquito-borne disease on that at least is being discussed in the news. It's not a new disease. It was described in Colorado. Jamestown Canyon, Colorado is where it was first described. And it's a disease that not a lot is known about. The vectors aren't well known. It looks like, because human cases tend to occur early in the season, that is, they can occur as early as April or May, whereas a lot of the other mosquito-borne diseases are only summertime diseases, that it's mosquitoes that are abundant first in the spring that are involved in this. I was at a mosquito meeting in Michigan last week where some initial research came out, and 3 species of spring mosquitoes that are in Minnesota in our area were identified as potential vectors. So that's going to help us figure out now, with the surveillance information we've got, where we can conduct control to maybe more effectively control this disease. This disease is like West Nile virus. It's a central nervous system disease. It looks like most people who are infected by it, as with West Nile virus, maybe feel like they've got the flu, but not much more. A few people get very severe disease, and those who survive the very severe disease can have lasting disabilities because of it. The virus in the wild, it transfers between deer and moose and elk and 80 species of mosquitoes. That's known. There are 3 Aedes species, early season species, that were identified potentially by researchers at Michigan State. There's also an Anopheles species, which is in Minnesota, that was identified in Michigan. These haven't been identified. The mosquitoes are here, but West Nile or Jamestown Canyon positive mosquitoes haven't been collected in Minnesota. On the other hand, now we know more mosquitoes to collect, and we plan to collaborate with the folks in Michigan to see about getting them tested. So that helps answers big question for us. West Nile virus is a little different than Jamestown Canyon because it circulates between birds, and there are 2 bird-feeding species of mosquitoes that build it up in birds. One of those species, Culex pipiens, is known to feed on people as well, and another species called Culex tarsalis definitely feeds on people. It's pipiens and tarsalis that bring it to people. So it builds up in the birds first, and then it spills over to people and horses later. That's why most of the West Nile virus cases occur in July and August and September. It's a later season disease. This summary shows you, for 2017, Those are actual case rates for 2018. The numbers may go up a little bit more because the health department is still working on them. The CDC and the health department work together to define what kind of medical test results need to come back positive for somebody to be called a true case versus a potential case. But these data are enough to show you that compared to 2017, in 2018, there was no lacrosse in Minnesota. Jamestown Canyon activity was a little bit less in Minnesota in 2018 than 2017. You can see it's a rare disease. But our 2-week-long spring in 2018 and what it did to the spring mosquitoes may be part of what's going on here. West Nile virus, on the other hand, was more active in 2018 instead of 2017, and that's likely because the summer came on strong and came on early. We provide a few other services. We're not just mosquito control. We also provide education and surveillance for tick-borne disease. We have a mandate, legislative mandate, to control ticks, but there is no cost-effective, environmentally safe way to do that in a wide area. Individual homeowners can do some things, and we can tell people what kind of things you can contemplate and what kind of specialists you can get to come and provide that service. However, we've had a rodent surveillance program for about 25 years, and rodents, well, the ticks start their development on rodents and then move to deer and people. Lyme disease and the other tick-borne diseases are, the reservoir is rodents. So the ticks are infected by rodents, and then they bring it to people. So by monitoring the rodents, we get the best early warning of when the risk to people increases. We also use our staff as a secondary set of information. We ask everybody, we train them how to check themselves for ticks. We ask them if they find ticks to collect them and bring them in and let them know, and also to let us know when they're starting to see ticks active, because that means if they're finding ticks active, everybody else will too. So we can get the word out. We also provide biting gnat or black fly control, and we provide it in small streams early in the spring and primarily then in the larger rivers in the late spring through the summer. We use BTI. It's all larval control for black flies. It's a different formulation of BTI that is designed to go into the water column so the black fly larvae will feed on it. Finally, I'd like to close briefly with some plans for 2019. We plan to continue to manage our budget and expenditures. We have a long-term goal of keeping the district fiscally healthy in the long term. Ultimately, we would like to be able to expand our services slowly but surely. The population of the metro area is growing, and we need to be able to provide services to a larger number of people. Disease risk reduction is probably, if there is one major reason for mosquito control, the disease risk reduction is that. And the new Jamestown Canyon information we've received means we can review our program and perhaps target our surveillance to some of the species that have been identified for it. Also, looking at how disease prevalence, especially in people, changes from year to year, and reviewing the climatic variability that we're all experiencing. We are working to design more flexibility into our programs, because it seems like there is no typical year anymore. Finally, we've embarked on a sustainability program for a long time at the district, but each year there's something new. Last year we were able to get solar power for most of the district, and it's by subscribing to solar generation gardens, and then the power still comes through Excel. But that's one way. Another way is working with our manufacturers so we get bulk shipments of control materials rather than 40-pound bags or 22-pound jugs. We were able to eliminate about 4,600 containers last year. So it's taken a lot of years of work, but that's finally coming along. And long-term succession planning and key employee retention, you're going through the same thing we are. We've got a lot of people who are ready to retire, and a lot of them are single incumbents. Our entomologist retired last year. We have a new entomologist. We have a new assistant entomologist, and we upgraded a blackfly position. So we see public relations and human resources coming in the next year or two. So that's where we're working to figure out how do we design these new job positions so they meet the needs of the future. If you have questions at any time, or your citizens have questions at any time, please refer them to, have them call this number, have them check our website. We respond to everybody who calls and try to answer everybody's questions. If you have service needs, this really helps us figure out, where are the mosquitoes bad, what are people concerned about, how can we, which aspects of our program can we then focus on those areas. So if we have time and you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. Great report. Questions for Mr. Manweiler?
Madam Chair, I can make 2 comments if I may.
Yes, please.
One is, we spend about $20 million a year trying to control mosquitoes in the metropolitan area. And I've had people ask me, they never see the mosquito people, there's still mosquitoes in the air, what's the deal, are we wasting our money, and so on and so forth. But last summer I took the grandkids to Crosse County to a park where we couldn't even come outside in the middle of the day without getting mosquitoes in your ears and up your nose, and we were chewing them. I mean, it was dreadful. And I take it they don't have a mosquito control commission in Crosse County. It was a pleasure to get back to the Shakopee, where we get a bite maybe every 15 minutes instead of 15 a second, it seemed like. So yes, the mosquito control district makes a big impact on our quality of life and on the health and welfare of the citizens, because Stephen is exactly right. They are disease-carrying little creatures, and it's just part of what I think government does when we can do that and make life better. So thank you for the good work you do there, and yes, it's worth every penny we spend. Speaking of that, if I can hijack your presentation for just a moment. We've been talking about Metropolitan Council issues, about having elected officials running the Metropolitan Council, and people go, oh, it would become parochial, oh, it would be bogged down in all kinds of mischief. This is one of those boards, the Mosquito Control District, that's run entirely by elected officials. And I don't notice any parochialism. In fact, I notice a great deal of cooperation among each other, and somehow we levy and spend $20 million a year on behalf of the citizens, and we do so with openness and grace and get along ability, and it's just, I think, a very small example of what it is we're striving for when we're trying to do Met Council governance reform. Stephen, thank you for letting me hijack your presentation just to get that little lobbying plug in there.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Beard, thank you for the compliments. And also, I guess I would echo your comments in 2 ways. One, working with you all with our commission has just been, we're problem solvers, and I think we are able to work together and figure out, given our resources and given what we know, what's the best way to do things. The other thing is it's very gratifying. When I was an undergraduate at UC Riverside, methoprene and BTI were lab curiosities. And to find myself now in a position where those 2 things make people's lives so much better, and it came from the entomology that I love and live, that it's just very satisfying. Makes me feel really good.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Stephen, any chance that the 32 below temperature I had last week is going to kill off all the mosquitoes?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Wolf.
Or an effect at all?
Not on your life.
No.
The only one would be the Asian tiger mosquito. It probably eradicated any of those that were, if there were any overwintering at the tire recycling facilities, it should have eradicated those mosquitoes.
Well, good question. Thank you, Mr. Manweiler. Your report is always so good. I feel like we almost should have a quiz at the end to make sure that we understood everything. And I thank you for this report. I know I'm going to be going to some township meetings tonight and next week, and it's nice for me to be able to show them what Metropolitan Mosquito Control District's been doing in their areas too. So thank you for all your work. Thank you for your passion. I agree with Commissioner Beard. it's a quality of life issue, but it is definitely a public health issue that we need to be aware of and keep working on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being our mouthpiece then. If you're sharing it with other citizens, that's great. The more they understand, the better.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you. All right, continuing with the agenda, next we have our consent agenda. These are items that have already been discussed, some have had several hearings on, and that will, unless pulled from the consent agenda, pass with one motion. I will read through these items. Item 7.1, to adopt resolution number 2019-008, adopting the financial policy and rescinding resolution numbers 2014-133, 2005-083, 2010-103, 2018-142, 2011-232, 2011-266, 2011-121, 2017-079, 2016-027, 2011-193, 99026, 2009-029. Rescinding board policy entitled Handling Collections and Reporting Cash Overages and Shortages, approved on August 11th, 1981, and rescinding the bill payment policy that became effective January 1, 1986. That was a long agenda item. 7.2, to adopt resolution number 2019-009, declaring the official intent of Scott County to reimburse certain expenditures from the proceeds of bonds to be issued by the county. Agenda item 7.3, to adopt resolution number 2019-011, authorizing an amendment to the professional design services contract with Wold Architects and Engineers associated with the Government Center Campus project. 7.4, to adopt resolution number 2019-012, authorizing entering into an agreement with Wold Architects and Engineers for roof improvements on county-owned buildings. 7.5, to adopt resolution number 2019-013, requesting the Metropolitan Council to approve the functional classification change of a portion of county state aid highways 42, 17, and 78 to principal arterial, and a portion of county state aid highway 21 to a minor arterial expander on the Metropolitan Highway system. 7.6, to adopt resolution number 2019-014, certifying final approved appraisal of value for certain land acquisitions and authorizing acquisition by expedited or quick take eminent domain proceedings for County Project 21-27 located in the city of Prior Lake, Minnesota. 7.7, to approve the application and permit for a temporary on-sale liquor license for the Shakopee Lions Club. 7.8, to approve the request from Ames Construction as applicant, Jess Modine and Joseph Card as owners, for an interim use permit to operate a mining facility in Section 21 of Louisville Township. 7.9, adopt resolution number 2019-010, authorizing entering into a memorandum of understanding with the City of Prior Lake for a future Commerce Avenue extension located in the City of Prior Lake. 7.10, adopt resolution number 2019-015, authorizing the execution of a quitclaim deed conveying a parcel of land to the city of Elko New Market. Item 7.11, adopt resolution number 2019-007, authorizing the appointment of Michael Groh as first assistant county attorney pursuant to Minnesota statutes 388.10. And 7.12, to approve payroll processing of personnel actions. Colleagues, that's the consent agenda. Are there any items that you would like removed for discussion? Yes, Commissioner Ulrich.
Madam Chair, I'd like 7.9 pulled for a presentation.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Beard.
I'd like to pull 7.5 just for some comments, if I may.
All right.
Madam Chair, with that, I would move to adopt the other 10 items on consent.
Second.
Just a quick comment that I
Discussion,
had.
Commissioner Beard.
Sorry, I just had a lengthy meeting on 7.6 and will not be pulling that. So thank you to Lisa Fries and Randy Ronning for additional information on that.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda as presented, minus 7.5 and minus 7.9, which we will have presentations on. Any further discussion on that motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Then we'll move on to 7.5. And who will be,
Madam Chair.
yes, oh, this is just for comments, I'm sorry.
Yes, a presentation will not be necessary. I have been involved, Madam Chair and colleagues, for behind the scenes, been hearing about this whole discussion for better than a year now. And I know there was some turbulence, I guess you could say, and some folks that had some of the jurisdictions had some serious concerns about things they wanted in the whole process as this moved forward. To me, it just seemed like this was an open and shut case. We should just designate it principal arterial beyond with life. And so I just want to tip my hat to staff for working their way through this with our city colleagues, with our friends at the Metropolitan community, and for achieving even more than we wanted to, because I know initially we were talking just about 42 and maybe a piece of 17, but at the suggestion of our friends at City of Shakopee, we've added 78, which just makes so much sense to do that. And we've done it all with a handshake and a cup of coffee, and I just wanted to extend kudos where kudos were due. And with that, Madam Chair, I will move Resolution 2019-013 and all the other things it says here on our screen. So you already read it once. I'm not going to read it again.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution number 2019-013. Any further discussion on this matter?
Real brief.
Yes, sir.
I will just add that I was at the Prior Lake City Council where they last night voted to go forth on a resolution supporting that as well, just as a slight sidebar.
Great, great. And I want to echo Commissioner Beard's comments about 78. I do think it is a good long-term looking ahead, because that is going to be a major thoroughfare there. So any further discussion on this matter? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We'll move on to 7.9, and it looks like County Administrator Vermillion will be doing the presentation.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, this is one of the last things I believe Mr. Shelton was working on as he was leaving. It plays into the discussion you've just had. 42's discussion on functional class actually goes back to about 1994. It's how long we've been talking and planning and working on this issue between the two counties and the 7 cities that it impacts. This is the corner or the intersection of 13 to the north here, 42 to the west coming this direction. And this is to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Prior Lake to preserve, if you can see the red dashed line here, a potential Commerce Avenue. That alignment is not defined, as the city of Prior Lake still needs to talk about their development and redevelopment in this area and where exactly that alignment would be and how it would come through. But those 5 parcels that were there, they were purchased for several reasons by the county, starting in about 2002, I believe being completed in about 2007, somewhere in that time frame. And they were actually purchased to remove access directly off of 42. And they were also acquired to help in the early discussions here provide a local connecting roadway, which Commerce Avenue would do, and provide some connection back into those businesses without direct access off of 42. The memorandum calls out between the county board and the city council of Prior Lake that they will maintain these properties until at time they decide to construct the connecting roadway and they finish their discussions with their neighborhood and their community, but that we will retain those parcels. They are not good for direct development on their own. They can't have direct access to 42, but they do provide a way to develop along there, along with a connecting roadway between Commerce and Rutgers. And so the MOU calls that out. They will maintain the property. The county will hold that property until such time that they have an alignment that works and meets the county highways connection requirements at 42 and Rutgers in that vicinity. And then we would transfer them that for an easement to build their roadway.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Ulrich.
Just one question. Obviously, it's for the roadway, but I'm just curious. There's 3 parcels that the roadway, at least 3 that are still pretty much untouched by that used to have homes on. Is there any commercial possibility there for those three if the roadway goes in? Is there?
Commissioner Ulrich, Madam Chair, it does leave that open with that potential. The way the memorandum of understanding is written, there would be the potential, depending upon the alignment of the roadway, for them potentially to have some access to the north for development. It is left that open that that could be accommodated. Our part of it would be to provide those parcels, retaining the right-of-way we need for 42 and access control along 42. So that is also very clear in the memorandum of understanding.
Well, yeah, that brings up another question, if I might. Just to say a little bit more, originally this project was going to be a multi-season project that would be a more lanes here. And it was, the jurisdictions didn't want to do the multi-season disruption and do the bigger project. We're going to retain the space needed for, is that what you just said?
Correct. So the 200-foot corridor that's needed for 42 as a principal arterial, whatever highway is determined we would need there would be retained, as well as they'll amend the right-of-way plat to show there's access control along those parcels.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Beard.
Leslie, I'm looking in this resolution here. It appeared to me at first blush that this was to authorize you to enter into a memorandum of understanding, but I don't see the actual memorandum here. Is there a document that I'm missing, or is the resolution itself, does it contain the memorandum and the points you spoke of?
There is an actual document, just like when we have a contract or memorandum. Those typically aren't attached. This contains what the memorandum calls out.
In the resolution itself?
Correct.
Okay, I'm seeing that here, okay.
Any further questions or comments?
And this was obviously hammered out with the folks at the city through many meetings back and forth, and
I believe Mr. Shelton had very many meetings and discussions on it, and Mr. Boyles and I and Lisa and Jason have gone back and forth on the wording to make sure that it's clear that the right-of-way is preserved, the access is maintained, that they're maintaining it, and it will come on their time frame. We're not going to drive that. It's their decision when they want to develop and do it.
which is exactly where I was going, that there's not a specific time frame attached to this.
There is no time frame in the MOU.
And so I, again, was at the Prior Lake City Council last night where this was on the agenda, but it's gonna be kicked, or was kicked to the next meeting primarily because one of the counselors who lives literally in the backyard was not present. So I don't know anything, but I don't think that there was any, I don't think the city has issues with that, but just to let you know that that will be on their next meeting item.
Yes, they advised us of that. We actually were moving this to meet their time frame. And then it turned out that somebody who was very engaged in the process was out, so they advised us they're moving it to the next meeting in February.
Perfect.
Any further questions or comments on this matter?
Madam Chair, just to go think here. This normally, I think, when somebody pulls the consent item and they get the information, then that person usually puts forward the motion. But in this case, it is a Prior Lake issue, and if I'll defer to you, I'll make the motion, or I think
I'll move it. I think it's been worked out in good faith.
I'll second.
Great, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. Good presentation and good to get that background. If there's no further discussion, please say aye if you approve.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carried. All right, now we're moving on to 8.1 to approve the request for rezoning. It looks like Mr. Hall is going to present on this matter.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the item before us today is the rezoning from R1 to R2 and the preliminary and final plat for Country View. The subject parcel is a 10-acre parcel located in Spring Lake Township, just west of Mushtown Road. The property currently contains a single-family home and an accessory building. The applicant is proposing a 3-lot subdivision with an approximately 4.62 acre lot and then 2 additional lots that are both buildable and 2.5 acres. And the issue that we're here today for, the thing that is unresolved, is that this parcel line, lot line between 1 and 2, comes 15 feet from the existing accessory building. The requirement for the side setback is 30 feet. And the Spring Lake Township discussed this issue at their January meeting, and they recommended the applicant sign an agreement stating that if the building needs to be repaired or replaced at some point in the future, it must be repaired and rebuilt to meet the 30-foot setback standard, and staff envisions that might be part of a deed restriction. Scott County staff has recommended that the property become compliant, and the Planning Advisory Commission has followed staff's recommendation, approving the request to rezone and approve the preliminary and final plat with the condition that the accessory building be brought into compliance with the setback requirements of the Scott County zoning ordinance, or a financial guarantee be provided to ensure the structure becomes compliant. And so the applicant is appealing this condition set by the Planning Commission and is asking the board to allow the existing building to remain where it is unaltered. And there is an attached letter attached to your packet from the applicant, and I would just like to clarify one of the statements in that letter. The applicant stated that that staff has allowed other subdivisions that created non-conforming shed sizes and setbacks, and the applicant is correct that other subdivisions have been permitted where the accessory building would exceed the size requirements of the ordinance after the subdivision. However, it would be very rare for a subdivision to put a structure at a non-conforming setback to a lot line. Staff cannot think of an instance where that's occurred when a developer was attempting to maximize the number of lots created. There would be a rare instance where, for family planning purposes, a farmstead is being split apart and it was not possible to create enough distance between the farmhouse and the agricultural buildings. But that's really the only instance that staff would be able to consider that necessary. The applicant is present, and this concludes the presentation, Madam Chair, and I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Do we have questions for Mr. Hall? Could you briefly just explain the financial assurance that would be required in this case if we went forward with staff's recommendation?
The financial assurance would be, we imagine it would be something, say, $5,000 to ensure that the building is removed or modified to become compliant within a set amount of time.
Thank you. Commissioner Beard.
Any idea on what that set amount of time might be? Weeks, months, years?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Beard, we would imagine about 6 months is what we would propose.
All right, Commissioner Beard.
Madam Chair, while staff is here, if I may, it's Mr. Hall, you said?
Yes.
Correct.
The, as I read through this is the one that grabbed my attention because, again, it's like we've got rules and I don't understanding why we have hard and fast rules. For one, it looks like on when the land was being subdivided, the line was moved over already to accommodate 15 feet around the lean-to portion of this pole barn. But there's, I believe, a prohibition against these rural lots being less than 150 feet of street frontage. Do I understand that correctly? Did I read that somewhere?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Beard, correct. The requirement for property in the RR2 district is for it to have 150 feet of width.
Can you tell us why that is? Maybe that's a Marty question.
Perhaps the zoning administrator is more.
Yeah, there you go.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Beard, within the zoning ordinance, all of our zoning districts have a particular lot width that's associated with that district, and it increases as the parcel size increases. And in the R2 district, where we allow lots 2.5 acres and larger, the minimum lot size has been set at 150 feet since probably 1971. It does require frontage along a publicly maintained road, and that minimum lot width needs to be met at the minimum building setback to the road. That's the way it is worded. So at 100 feet back from the center line of the road, the lot needs to be 150 feet wide. It's to maintain spacing, to maintain the rural character, openness in the unincorporated areas, so we don't get houses and lots too close together. So that's the intent of the width requirement.
Madam Chair, Mr. Mitt, looking at this lot line thing, is that barn more than 100 feet back? I mean, and what I'm getting at is the applicant is asking for a variance on his setback on his property. Would it be easier to get a variance on that lot line taking a jog right there to maintain the 30 feet? Or the proposed lot, be lot 2? Looks like we've already moved the lot line a little bit to accommodate the pole barn. But that must put us right up against the 150-foot restriction we've created, right?
That is correct, Commissioner Beard. Both lot 1 and lot 2 are 150 feet in width. So we can't pull this lot line any further away from that boundary. The portion of the building that we are talking about removing is this portion of the building here, which was added onto the structure after the initial building was built. So the addition could be removed and it wouldn't structurally affect the remainder of the building. The remainder of the building would meet the 30-foot setback from that property boundary.
So that could be moved, it could be removed, it could be moved to the other side of the barn, I suppose. So with just removing the lean-to portion would satisfy the 30-foot setback we've established?
That is correct, Mr. Beard. Yeah, it would be exactly 30 feet from the side property boundary, because I believe the lean-to is 15 feet.
Okay. Let me ponder that, Madam Chair.
Right.
Maybe there's somebody else wants to talk about this.
Any other questions for Mr. Schmitz before we hear from the applicant? All right, thank you. And the applicant is here, Mr. Michaels.
Thank you and good morning. So yes, and you know, I think you have a copy of my letter with kind of my deal with this. When we had the planning commission here last month, I probably had like 8 or 10 neighbors that showed up, and they had no no issues with the pole barn. As is, that was never brought up. I personally think removing the addition, the tin that's on the building now is no longer available. It's a 12-inch centered tin. It's all 9-inch. It's 31 years of color fade on there. So my guess is they would have a lot more issues with a new tin on one side of the barn that's now going to look different for the next 30 years. So that's part of it. I mean, obviously the extra storage space. My son is going to be moving into the house, so the extra storage space, I'm not going to argue or deny that it's not nice, but that is not the main reason for leaving the lean-to portion of the building on. It's the current water for the building comes up into that lean-to into the concrete floor, so that has to get cut out and tunneled underneath the main structure of the building then and put in. So, and again, I'm not asking for it to put a new building up that's 15 feet off of property line. Whoever buys lot 2 from me will, they have the option that, no, the building's too close to the property line. I don't want that lot. They don't have to buy it. So, so they would have that option. I have a letter from the county from the township that they are, recommending that I can leave it as is. So that's what I'm here asking you guys for, so.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Right, thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this matter?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, colleagues, what are your thoughts? What's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, procedurally, if we were going to amend the staff recommendation, we'd have to have it all in front of us and move to strike something, I would think. So I'm looking through it here, but our County Planning Commission recommended that we do have them remove the, at least the 15-foot lean-to, right?
That's correct. Mr. Schmitz, would you like to provide some comments?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, really the way I look at it, there's two options before you. Option one would be the option that's recommended by staff and the Planning Commission, where we would approve the rezoning preliminary and final plat for Country View Estates and have the applicant provide a security for the removal of the lean-to portion of this building. As Mr. Hall indicated, that security would be likely in the area of $5,000 and would allow him 6 months to make that change. Option two would be as recommended by the township, Spring Lake Township, and that would be to approve the rezoning preliminary and final plat of Country View Estates, allow the building, excuse me, to stay in its current state with an agreement between the county and the applicant. What we would envision there would be some sort of deed restriction whereby the building would be allowed to stay in this location until such a time due to fire, storm, natural deterioration of the building that the building needs to get replaced. And then at that point in time, any future construction would be done in compliance with county setback requirements. Both the scenarios get us to compliance with the county zoning requirements. The second scenario just takes a little bit longer for us to get there.
Thank you, that's a good summary.
Just as you're sitting down, Marty, Madam Chair. The option two is you're kind of representing, how does that sit in your gut, so to speak?
It's really a unique situation. As the applicant indicated, during the public hearing for this project, we had all the neighbors on every side of him here because this is the first 10-acre parcel in the neighborhood being further subdivided into 2.5-acre lots. And those folks were all concerned about drainage flow, additional neighbors coming into the area, but not one of them was concerned about the setback on this particular property. I can see Mr. Michael's point. It might be hard to match this siding color after 31 years of fading. It is a red building. I imagine we could find red siding, but to match the fade that has occurred over 31 years could be difficult.
In this concrete floor, does it go over the whole, not just the lean-to, the whole building is concrete?
The whole building.
Madam Chair, if I can make just a process comment. You know, we as elected officials have to stand in front of our neighbors and say, vote for me because I'll be thoughtful and reasonable and consider all options and things like that, and uphold the law. And we've laid down the law over the years in the form of a zoning ordinance. And then our staff is required to do the letter of the law. That's what we ask them to do. And in this case, they have done exactly that. However, we're elected officials. Did I mention that already? And so are the township board. They're elected officials, and they're the ones closest to the neighborhood and actually hear and feel the neighbors' concerns and pain and things like this. And as we've heard, Spring Lake has said, sure, we're okay with this, just that when it's time to fall down, blow down, burn down, or whatever, no, you can't come back and ask for what we call the grandfathering clause again. So I think as elected officials, if we're going to look at our staff and say, thank you for your good work, now we're going to alter your good work and make a variance, we do that gravely and we don't do it lightly. But nonetheless, it is a tool in our toolbox to use as we govern the county and as these things come to us. It's why it's called an appeal, I guess. So Madam Chair, it's not the district I represent, but should someone make a district to uphold Spring Lake's recommendation, I would probably second it and support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Beard?
Yeah, and I would just say, I go along with that. I think it's, we need to have rules and regulations, you know, sometimes they maybe seem this way or that way. If the township is kind of making that recommendation, and our own folks see that as a path to get to where we're trying to get to, that seems reasonable to me, that it's within the letter of the law, but it's also a measure of reasonableness to it. So I'm looking at the applicant, and I don't, you know, I don't know if that's been, I've assumed it's been talked to. Does that seem to be a reasonable alternative moving forward to get us, everyone, to where we need to be?
Looks like he's indicating
Yes,
approval.
yes, yes.
Assent.
Correct, I'm sorry.
Great. Other comments? A motion?
Just a question. Now, the second agreement with the rebuilding, does that, in your mind, cover us in terms of the issue of precedence? In other words, even in this letter, it says, well, you allow this in other places. Well, not really on the lot line is what your response has been back. You can't think of a lot line situation like this. Will this second agreement help us to answer precedence questions from others in the future?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Ulrich, yes, I think it will help us get there. It gives us the opportunity to say that, yeah, we are coming into compliance with our requirements over time. It doesn't get us there immediately, but due to the unique circumstances of this case, where the building is 31 years old, the siding is not available anymore. In order to aesthetically keep the building appearing pleasing for the neighborhood, and in order to avoid some rather costly changes to some of the utilities being extended into the building, I think we can make the case that this is unique.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, me again. Thank you, Madam Chair. And so this setback does not affect drainage in your estimation one way or the other. I get the idea that the neighbors, I mean, you know, there's probably gonna be more of that as the township grows and expands. It's just the way the population wave is going. But this particular setback should not be an issue for handling surface water or whatever else.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Beer, we do not see this as being a drainage, have an impact on the drainage within this area. No.
Thank you.
Can I ask Marty before, Madam Chair? So the $5,000 for, what do you say, 6 months? So let's say we give them that option to take, and they don't take it down or whatever, do they just forfeit the and they can keep the building up there?
We would need to review that with our county attorney's office. I have worked with Mr. Michael quite a bit over the years. He's built a number of homes in Scott County. He's developed half a dozen properties similar to this. He has got an outstanding reputation as an honest business person who does quality work. I would not be too concerned with him not following through.
Are you trying to brainstorm additional revenue opportunities for us? I like that. All right, we have this matter before us. No motion on the table yet.
Oh, Madam Chair, again, I'm trying to be respectful of district boundaries since I represent most of the city of Shakopee and not Spring Lake Township. But we have been engaged out there with the turn lane issue and with density issues and with property not being developed to its maximum potential because of some other county policies. So I tend to look fondly on the decision Spring Lake Township made, and that's the motion I would make, that we approve the recommendation of the Spring Lake Township Board and move its adoption.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the request for rezoning, preliminary plat, and final plat of Country View in Section 26, Spring Lake Township, with the change to staff recommendations that the building will be allowed to violate the setback requirement, but a deed restriction will be placed on the property so that at any time the building is going to be repaired, rebuilt, that type of thing, that the setback requirement must be met. Further discussion on that issue?
Yes, Madam Chair, that sounds like the motion I intended to make. Thank you for cleaning it up.
You're welcome.
If I can recommend, we
That's the
use it.
motion I intended to second.
Use another word besides violate, like maybe grant a variance or
All
something
right.
besides violate. I'm sure staff will work it out. Our staff is very good at this.
Thank you for that suggestion. And I'll just comment, I think this is a good compromise. I think there, as Mr. Schmidt said, some unique circumstances here. If a different property owner owned the adjoining lot, we might not be doing this. You know, I think Mr. Michaels makes a good point that whoever purchases it is going to know this. This is the time for it. So I think there's enough unusual circumstances here that I do support this motion too. So that being said, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Yep.
Thank you. And on to item 9.1, an informational update on the reconstruction of the intersection of State Trunk Highway 13 and County Highway 21. Mr. Winecki, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, as we're pulling this thing up.
My words are escaping me this morning. Couple times. That cleared the room.
That was our excitement for the day.
That was good to have.
You know, while we're waiting, there's something to be said for me. Settle things.
It was, yeah.
Would like to having it in meetings like this. It can be a little awkward.
Sorry. I didn't even know you guys were going to pull it.
Meeting, we can't tell you that. I suppose we give you a heads up before the meeting.
I think you can have heads up.
Ulrich just takes it up on the fly.
County Commissioner just nodded her head.
It takes the temperature.
I have so many questions.
Didn't we just hire a new IT guy?
You need a new deputy clerk.
No, we like the one we have. Commissioner Wolf, maybe you might want to alert the mosquito control folks next time you see them that they're spelling Blakely incorrectly.
They don't have two E's on it.
Yeah, that would be good. Uh-oh, they're back.
It's not
A slow curveball. I was gonna crush. It's like Dad.
They brought some big books.
Looks like it's not gonna work. You know what, can we start without it?
Sure, I can. Do it for me too. Madam Chair, I move we accept the informational update.
We have
And thank
information
Tony
in our
for his efforts.
packets, right?
Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Do you want to do the commissioner updates while we're waiting?
I think we're ready to go.
Oh, we are, okay.
Want me to just do this? Sure. Okay, I think we'll go this route here.
All right.
Can you get that up there?
Got a picture of the sand we'll be using on the project there?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the delay here. A little technical difficulty, but I'm here to update you on the 2113 project. This has been many years in the making, and we're finally getting to that point here with the construction season fast approaching here. And so very fun and exciting times ahead of us for this construction season. So I do want to update you on the remaining design and right-of-way schedule. As you know, there's multiple projects in this area, so I want to talk about those and the coordination of those and the construction schedule and coordinating those activities, and then communication plans in doing so. I do have several slides to go through, but feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. So just to revisit with you again here, our project in particular here, our 2113 project here, there's several components here just to refresh you. Starting on the west side here near West Avenue, we've got a soil correction on County Road 21. And then moving eastward here, the Duluth Avenue will become a 3/4 access, that being a right in eastbound and a right out, and then a westbound left turn to go south on Duluth. And you will not be able to make that left turn north from Duluth to westbound 21. Yes, Commissioner?
Tony, the soil correction on the west end, that was an awful mess there, and I see you paved it this last year.
Yeah, a temporary patching there. Obviously, the settlement is still there, but the pavement was in such poor condition we couldn't get through another season without doing a temporary patch.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving east over to Arcadia, that will be a roundabout, and that will help facilitate that movement, that northbound left from Duluth. People will be able to either utilize a right turn and then the roundabout to do a U-turn, or Colorado Avenue, which is the south parallel roadway to 21. At Main Avenue, again, there'll be a 3/4 access intersection, right in, right out on both sides of the roadway, and then an eastbound left turn to go north into the north downtown area, and not the westbound left turn. And they'll be able to facilitate either getting into the south downtown by Pleasant Street or the roundabout at Arcadia. And then, of course, the roundabout at 1321 itself. Not shown on this particular figure, which is part of the project, is the trail replacement from 13 over to Franklin Trail, and then at Franklin Trail, ADA improvements and pedestrian improvements at that signalized intersection as well. And then on 13, there'll be the northbound left from 13 into south downtown at Pleasant Street. And then also there is a similar soil correction on 13 just south of Pleasant. So, and then this is what the final product will look like when it's all said and done. So just kind of schematically, that's what it will look like. So from a design standpoint here, we're fully anticipating final construction plan approval in March. We've got our 5th open house that's going to take place in April. And we'll advertise for construction in April. We've got right-of-way title and possession that will take place in May. We will open bids. And then we have, because there's federal dollars here, we've got a federal project clearance that takes some time, and we're expecting to come back to the board at the June 18th meeting. So these are the projects in the area, starting on Trunk Highway 13, the light blue from our county, Highway 17 or Trunk Highway 282. There's a pavement project that will extend up to the limits of our project. And as part of that project, it will include a signal at 170th Street or our County Road 12. The city has their Duluth Avenue reconstruction project, and that's the project that'll kick off first in the spring, and I'll get into that in just a moment. And then the navy blue is the limits of our 2113 reconstruction project. So this is the city's Duluth Avenue improvement project, and this will be the first one that starts up, weather permitting, in April. And so there are capacity and safety improvements at the intersection of Duluth and 13 itself. You'll see that's widened out. There's additional lanes there. There'll be a roundabout at the Duluth and Village Lake Drive. There's medians, all the red in the middle of the roadways, those are medians there, so there'll be improvements with access control. So that'll be a significant improvement for circulation and safety in that area. Then the 13 and 21 projects here, so they're kind of broken down into two stages, a stage 1 and 2 on 13 and a stage 1 and 2 on County Road 21. And so that first stage on 13, which will start up shortly after the Duluth project in May, and that will extend up and through a point on County Road 12 up to Five Hawks area. And shortly after that gets started, when our project goes to the board, so sometime mid to late June, our project will start, and I'll get into the details of that in a little bit here, but our project will start up simultaneously going on with that work from west through the Arcadia intersection. And then when that work is complete, then the remainder for both the Trunk Highway 13 and the 21 project, which is the light blue or purple there, will take place. So this might be a little harder to see since it's not in a PowerPoint and on the screen right in front of you, so I apologize for that. But the schedule that's shown in the lower right coordinates with the colors that are on this layout here, and so that dark blue is that Duluth Avenue area, and again, that will start up in mid-April, and that will go to some point later in July. And MnDOT's light blue, which is the west or southern portion of Trunk Highway 13, that construction will start up. And then their next stage on that particular segment is the green, taking it up through Fairlawn. And then the red area takes it up to Five Hawks. And so you see the purple area, that's our stage 1. And so that is that West Avenue through the Arcadia intersection, and I'll bring that other figure up again to show a little bit more detail of those limits. And then again, the combined stage 2 on 13 itself, and then our stage 2 at the 13-21 intersection is that orange. So the yellow and orange will be that remaining area for construction. I'll get into detours here, but the left insert figure that you see kind of shows on a big scale the detour routes we'll be utilizing: County Road 17, 42, and County Road 27 to get between 13 and 21. And we'll consider an alternate route to that between the southern part of 13 and the eastern part of 21. You see the dashed line there utilizing County Road 8, 23, and 68, and then back to 27. So again, our stage 1 will be the western limits of this project, which is the West Avenue, and that will go through the Arcadia intersection such that when this is completed at the end of July, Arcadia will remain fully open to the end of the construction project, which will be in November. And then our stage 2, which coincides with MnDOT's stage 2, then is the main avenue, and then over to Franklin Trail and the work on 13, including at Pleasant, and then soil correction in that area as well. So a detour for the 13 project. So once they start up with this project, this detour will remain in effect for the duration of the project. So sometime in May to November, when our project is done at 21 and 13. So it will utilize Marshall Road, County Road 17, and County Road 42. So it represents about a 2.5 mile additional length, which will take about 4 minutes extra to follow that route. And typically what you see, anytime you set a detour up, you're going to get about 1/3 of the people that follow the detour, about 1/3 of the people that will find some destination that they're going to within that area, and then you've got 1/3 that will find a different route. And that's pretty typical. So by about August 1st, when our stage 2 kicks in, then that intersection will be closed in its entirety at 21 and 13. And so again, that 13 detour will still be in effect. And the 21 detour will utilize County Road 42 and Texas Avenue, which is our County Road 27. And so then that will remain in effect from August through the end of the construction season into November. So at all stages within this entire construction season, it'll be open downtown. And I know that's been a big concern and how we communicate that out and how are people gonna get around. So we've spent a great deal of time over the last year, and we've had different subcommittees, construction subcommittees in the downtown area, the Village Lake area, and how we're gonna communicate that out. So this is just an example of what this detour or the circulation in the downtown area will look like in stage 2. So you'll be able to utilize 160th, which is our County Road 44, Franklin Trail, the Village Lake Drive. At this point, the Duluth intersection will be complete and open, utilizing Duluth and getting back onto 21, heading north or west, and then Dakota Street on the north side as well. So as part of those meetings with the businesses in the downtown area and the Village Lake area, we really looked at the collective business messaging. And both from a standpoint, how do we get people to downtown? We need to sign them to get people to downtown so they still know it's open. And then once they're in the downtown areas, how do we move them about in those areas? And so they'll be signing like this, and this is what they really came up with and agreed to. It's not specific any particular company, but it's those large areas. And so they're termed as downtown south, downtown north, and then South Lake Village. So people know where they're getting to. So you'll see multiple signs in those areas once you're getting them in that area. Okay? On the communication end of things, we, no question, have had a very robust public involvement effort to get us to this point, to the point of making decisions what we're actually going to build out there, and then how we're going to build that. And so that effort's been a very cooperative one between the city and the state and the county and the residents and businesses, and it's been really a tremendous effort. So as we're getting into construction now and how we communicate that out, we will have a community liaison, and so this person will really be that conduit between the public and the project team and construction staff and making sure that, you know, people are communicated to, businesses, and so it's really unique to do something like this, and this person will represent all 3 of those projects between the county, city, and state. We each have websites out there, social media. Still our main project site for the bulk of information, of which there's links to on all of our sites, is the moving forward 13-21.com. And so there's a ton of information that's in there. The video messaging that's been done to date, of which we'll be doing again this year. The e-blasts, the email blasts, I should say. So currently the city has over 600 people that are signed up. So anything that needs to be communicated out, people get that information. So there'll be weekly construction updates, of course, the detour maps and route signing, and then special events that will be part of this as well. You know, we already know that we're going to have some sort of roundabout education, you know, in advance of the roadway opening, you know, giving the opportunity for people to actually be on site and go out there. I don't know if it's going to be by golf carts or how that's going to be, that they have an opportunity to understand how the roundabouts are going to work. Up to this point, we've utilized this web-based public engagement tool called Input ID, and very slick tool here that people can go on there and literally you can drop a pin on there wherever you have a concern and put comments on there. And so it's really been useful, and that's on the moving forward 13-21. And shortly here, as we get into construction, we won't be utilizing this tool because the construction liaison person will be taking place of this Input ID. Then there's other construction communications that go on, agency-led initiatives, of course, Facebook for all 3 agencies and the regional detour signing. We have our Scott County scene, which we had an article that was very specific to this particular project last summer in the June-July issue. We anticipate having updates here coming up in one of the scenes yet this year. We have put signs out on our project starting last year that had this tag on there, the Scott County mn.gov/roads, to really alert people, hey, you can go here and sign up for alerts. So we have that same capability. So we've had lots of people, I don't know the exact number right now, but I know it's been an effective tool for us to really get people that drive through there, give them a location that they can find additional information. The city likewise has their weekly email, their city news wire. They've got their bi-monthly publication as well, the Wavelength. And then we know we've got to communicate with SMSC with their powwow celebration that's coming up. Theirs is in August, I think the 16th to the 18th. And then lastly, there's community-led initiatives, and the city is developing shop local campaigns to make, again, get people to go downtown, make sure that they know it's opening. The Lakefront Music Fest in July, and then Lakefront Days in August, and then any other special events that are coming up. And then they're looking at other opportunities that they're exploring as well. Business guides and construction bucks are just examples, and then activities that are around the farmers market, which will be May through September, the farmers market. So that's all I have. So any questions, be glad to try to answer.
Thank you, Tony. Great presentation, great update. Questions or comments for Tony? Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, I would just like to say thank you for doing this. I think it's important that we wrestle this thing to ground. It's been a great, getting all choked up over the topic. I mean, with all the open houses and all the communication that's going on, and I know we don't do that for every particular project, but when it's bisecting one of our cities, it's a big deal. So thank you for doing all of that communication. We've started well. I can't wait to finish well. So I've already heard as recent as last week, hey, you guys are pulling the roundabout at Arcadia. Wait, what? No? So that's why it's important that we have these types of communication so everyone's on the same page. I know it's not your first rodeo, but we just grab this thing and wrestle it to ground and bring it to completion. So I'll keep funneling information that I hear so we can take it to the truth test and make sure we're all on the same page. So thank you for the presentation.
We're looking very forward to this being done.
Comments or questions on this side?
Quite a while.
Tony, I just had a couple questions. Is the farmer's market going to stay in its regular location, or how's that going to work?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then do we have a date for the April open house yet?
We don't yet.
Okay.
No, we've got like 5 dates that we're trying to pick from.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll get that information.
Yep.
And then my final question, great idea to have the community liaison. I'm glad all the agencies are involved. Is that person chosen? Is it a current staff from one of our agencies? How's that working?
It will be the consultant that we're currently working with,
Okay.
a staff member.
Okay.
With that consultant, yes.
Wonderful. Thanks. Any further comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. On to committee reports and commissioner updates. Commissioner Ulrich, would you start us off?
Sure. On the 16th, I attended the Transportation Advisory Board. Also that day, later in the evening, the MICA annual meeting. Very interesting presentation from Steve Shire on trends in society. Recommended a book. He pointed out that society is getting, believe it or not, more conservative and more liberal at the same time, which how is that possible? It means the middle is shrinking, and that makes for more gridlock in government. And so that was, I actually bought the book on tape, and I'm excited to go through that. So it was a very good meeting. 18th, the Fish Marketing Committee and the Fish Fundraising Committee. We are having a empty bowls fundraiser for fish on Thursday. There's 2 different times where soup will be served, and this is at Shepherd of the Lake, but there's obviously over the lunch hour, and then there's a later early evening kind of opportunity to come there as well. There's entertainment throughout both of the segments, so I hope people can stop by and help support the work of fish. The same day, the 169 Corridor Coalition met. The 22nd, I visited the chair, vice chair. We heard a presentation from Angie Craig, and we expressed our thoughts on government log jams or loggerheads or inability to cooperate, and she got it. I said, and I think we all would agree that when our government can't work together, it's really becomes a national security type issue, because we need to be able to work together, and she got that, and so I think the new congressmen are, of all different types are trying to get us moving forward and to work together, so that would be a good thing. 22nd, also the Live, Learn, Earn Steering Committee. 23, Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. 24th, the Fish Board, and 27th, Jail Church Services. I led those in Scott County. And then the 1st, the Legislative Breakfast, and the 4th, Mobility Management Board. That's my report.
Can
Thank
I
you.
ask,
Questions?
what time did you say the bowls thing was at Shepherd Lake on Thursday?
Well, there's a lunch hour. I don't have the exact times, like 9 to 11.
I think it's 11
to 1 or
Okay.
something like that. And then there's a, like,
4 to 7.
4
It's
to
11:30 to 1 and 4 to 7
And
at
then
Shepherd of the
anybody
Lake.
can come to that?
yeah, it's wide open. It's a,
Okay.
invite out there far and wide.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Commissioner Beard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, on the 16th, I also attended as your second appointment to the MICA Board, that meeting in Northfield with Commissioner Ulrich, where we heard Steve Schreier speak. It was indeed a fascinating view from his perspective on what's going on in Minnesota politics. On the 17th, that morning, I attended the Shakopee High School and Industry Council meeting. That's for the Academies of Shakopee program that's been instituted. Of course, we are participating as one of the sponsors, and so I attended in that capacity. On the 18th, attended the 169 Coalition Exec Committee meeting that Commissioner Ulrich referenced. Later that day, I attended the AMC board meeting in St. Paul as one of your District 10 representatives. On the 21st, I had lunch with new city councilor, Jody Brennan, to welcome her to elected life and just to talk about things of mutual interest between Scott County and Shakopee. On the 22nd, as has been mentioned and will be mentioned again, I also attended the joint meeting with Congresswoman Craig here in the board conference room. On the 23rd, I had my monthly meeting with our new administrator, Leslie Vermillion. We were over at Wampox and had an appropriate amount of encouragement from the waitress at Wampox. It was bracing.
What color Jell-O did you have?
Red. And then later that afternoon, I had the privilege of having 45 minutes of time with the new Commissioner of Transportation, Commissioner Margaret Kelleher. She and I had served 8 years together and actually had a pretty collegial relationship. So I stopped by to welcome her to the lofty fourth corner office at DOT. That was good for all of us, that we did well. On the 29th, County Board Workshop, which we'll hear more about too, and on the Friday morning past February 1st, I attended the legislative breakfast with our county legislative delegation at Perkins in Savage. Madam Chair, that's my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Beard. Any questions or comments for him?
I should point out too, I will be gone now the next 2 weeks, and so I will, it's a light portion of my schedule anyhow for county commissioner liaison duties, but I'll be someplace much warmer than this for a few days, but I'll be back for the next board meeting.
Good to know. Thank you. Commissioner Beard.
Thank you. On the 15th, had my monthly administrator meeting. I'll have to come up with a term for that. It used to be the woodshed, so I don't know what it'll be. It's always good. Super informative, great conversation, awesome dialogue. It's an important part of my monthly schedule for sure. Later that day, we'll remember we went to DC for I think it was the White House Intergovernmental Affairs. They hosted a conference call. I don't know if it was President Live, it was one way, or on tape, but just an update. Of course, that was right in the heart of the government shutdown, so I had 45 minutes through Homeland Security with the President. Also, I'm sorry, the 21st, Prior Lake City Council had their meeting, and at that meeting, that's when they, I believe it was 5-0, approved the construction agreement for the project that we just had an update on, and I think it's been a very good back and forth. You know, everyone is, I believe, absolutely on the same page and the same team and wanting to make sure the rest of this thing to ground, and any little misinformation or things that we hear to make sure we run it to ground. So it was a very good back and forth with Jason Waddell. I like to call him Hat Trick because I think he's got 3 or 4 titles over there. Went through it with their council, and again that was approved 5-0, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing that to fruition. On the 22nd, Chair, Vice Chair, as was mentioned, our newly elected Congresswoman Angie Craig was there, so it's always good to see who represents us at the federal level and make sure we're building bridges, because we have a lot of things that flow downhill. On the 24th, Future Leaders, I was over at Saks, always a great time with the 9th graders, and I'll be looking forward to hosting them here in April. That afternoon also was the Fish Board meeting, where we've already talked about our Thursday snowstorm / fundraiser. Everyone's going to be, I'm looking at John down there, everyone's going to be digging in and digging out, but getting there, getting to the fish on Thursday. On the 29th, we had our board strategy session at Prior Lake Library. I think that was a good time to have some conversations at the table. I learned a lot from our folks that I was sitting around. Sorry for them that they had to sit with me, but nonetheless, it was good. On the 30th, attended the Farmer-Led Council as part of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed, who we have a manager, Kurt Hennis, in the audience here. That's, to me, it just felt like a great public-private partnership where people are coming together for common goals of lake or just water quality in general, and what can be done to help minimize runoff into our watershed. So that was a well-attended meeting at the VFW, and I think that was at the midst of our polar vortex, and people showed up. So that was a great meeting, and I think we have 2 farmers there that made the lake-friendly farm. So and others can be certified, and others will be certified, but we just celebrated 2 at that particular meeting. On the 1st, also attended the legislative breakfast with our St. Paul delegation. Again, super important to build bridges, as we can't do much on our own, and so we need each other. So it was just good to meet a couple, I guess the one newly elected was there. Last night, Prior Lake City Council again, where we certainly celebrated. Had I known this, I would have gone to the podium in a smoking jacket with a snifter and a pipe. I know him as Frank Boyles. That was his last meeting last night, but it's Francis Frederick Boyles III. You can't hardly say that without a little. So I gave him a hard time about that. I have a third in my family, so it's good. So that was his last meeting, the last pounding of the gavel. And he was celebrated by many folks. 26 years in that seat in Prior Lake, and I think at least 20 or 19 before that at other city organizations. Or other government organizations. Also, I had previously mentioned that the memorandum is going to be postponed, which Leslie, you're already aware of, for the next meeting. And this morning, new employee welcome. That is the end of my report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Commissioner Beer? All right, Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the 16th, the Elko New Market mayor and I, the newly elected mayor, and I met just for coffee and hour and a half of discussions, just to kind of decide or help get some business and some more activity in that city. That afternoon, I met with Dawn Seprasad. She's the new council member out there. And then that evening, the MICA meeting, I went and attended that in Northfield with Commissioner Ulrich and Beard. It was very informative, and it's funny how he came up with all these different numbers of politics, and if you compare those to 2 or 4 or 5, 6, 10 years from now, they may be all different, on how things went. This election was kind of crazy. On the 17th, Belle Plaine Future Leaders, did a couple classes there. On the 18th, I met with Sheriff Luke Hennon for breakfast and just talk about some of his initiatives for the next 4 years. On the 23rd, the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District. On the 24th, the Vermilion River Joint Powers Organization, and then that evening, Elko New Market City Council meeting. On the 28th, my first monthly meeting with the new administrator, Leslie Vermilion. And then after that, the WMO, the Watershed Management Organization. And we had the workshop on the 29th, a very good ditch board meeting out in Lee Center on the 31st. Boy, I can't believe how many people showed up on a 20 below day to talk about ditches. And it was, thank you for joining us, Commissioner Beard, by the way. Anyhow, yeah, people are concerned about ditches. Anyhow, the legislative breakfast on the 1st out at Perkins there, very good to meet with all them. And then on the 5th last night, Prior Lake City, I was at the workshop early on. They were talking, the biggest thing there is the chicken ordinance and the bee ordinance. How many chickens, what kind of chickens, and with the bees, you know, a specific kind of bee is the only kind of bee they would let, I think they're the Carolinas, they didn't say it, but they don't bite or sting as much as others, so. And then I think they wanted like less than 5 chickens. Anyhow, then Credit River had their monthly meeting. They had a pretty bad accident out there on Sunday. If it's icy and foggy, slow down would be the word. They talked about turn lanes last night on County Road 27. They got a couple spots where it's getting a little bit probably dangerous that there's no turn lanes there, so it's probably needed to get those. The sheriff deputy came and talked about there was a chase of a tractor and a manure spreader on Sunday, and they caught him. And then Cedar Lake.
Madam Chair, I got to ask, which deputy got to do the pursuit?
I don't know. It sounds like it may have been a domestic, so I don't know, but he clocked out at 24 miles an hour, but they caught him. And then, so like I was saying, Cedar Lake Township last night, our administrator, Leslie Vermillion, came out there and met with them and introduced her to the, they get quite a, 20, 25 people for attendance for their meetings out there, and been getting a lot of calls on, and this will come before us here in the next couple of months. The YMCA is still planning on moving to Newmarket Township there, and people, and I've gotten well over 100 calls and emails, are concerned about them coming out there. So something to watch for, but you know, it's one of the things I tell people is if it may be zoned for that, and if it is, then we have to put some conditions on there that would, you know, help out the neighborhood and keep it less dusty or noisy from traffic and whatever else. So anyhow, that is my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. Any questions or comments for Commissioner Wolf?
Oh, I just want to run with that manure spreader pursuit. What's the sheriff going to write him up for? What kind of charges will be?
Ron, that's your department.
Madam Chair, I would just leave it alone.
All right. We'll get you some information.
That was actually asked last night because it wasn't completed. He couldn't talk to the issue and the concerns because they hadn't finished the case to move forward.
Oh, is that right?
Right. That was, I mean, that's how the deputy responded last night.
All right.
Very appropriately. Thank you. All right. For my report, on January 16th in the evening, I helped out at the Scott County Historical Society fundraiser at Shakopee Brew Hall. Played some bingo there. On January 17th, had the MELSA meeting. Probably the biggest topic of discussion is the hiring of a new executive director because Ken Behringer, the current executive director, is retiring this summer, and so we'll need to get a new one there. The other larger topic of discussion was all the regional libraries and regional library systems are working to advocate to the legislature about baseline library aid. We heard about that at our legislative breakfast. January 17th in the evening, had the Library Board of Trustees. We met this month out at Jordan's Library. Had a good turnout and good discussion about national library trends and programs and things that we should look at and aspire to. January 18th, I had my first Dakota Scott Workforce Development Board meeting, a new assignment for me. It was a good meeting and a very similar presentation as to your MICA meeting where Professor David Schultz from Hamlin talked about the election, the polarization, more conservatives and more liberals, as Commissioner Ulrich said. But then again, like Commissioner Wolf said, about how in the next 10 years we're really going to see some changes there. On January 22nd, had the chair-vice chair meeting as was previously discussed. Later that day, we had the Mental Health Local Area Advisory Committee meeting. That group really is looking at their next priorities. Up in, the last couple of years had to do with the ERTS facility and the mobile crisis response. Sounds like a lot of discussion about housing for people with mental health issues, that's really one of our biggest concerns. So that group probably will present to the board in the near future. Later on January 22nd, had the Live, Learn, Earn Ed Prep Committee. That committee is working on a literacy texting campaign, not texting and driving, but texting to parents of young children with tips and ideas about reading and literacy and trying to do some parental education that way. January 23rd had my monthly conference call for the NACO Human Services Committee. Obviously at that time much of this discussion had to do with the shutdown and the impacts to our local county agencies, things that were coming up. January 24th, I attended the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce annual meeting. Great turnout, great participation by local businesses. And then that evening, attended the Jordan Commercial Club meeting at Clancy's, where we heard from two of the current Jordan police officers and got to try out a new pizza. It was kind of a cheeseburger pizza that had pickles on it. It was quite good. January 25th, I did one presentation for future leaders at Shakopee Junior High West, my old high school. That was weird. A couple years ago. January 29th, our county board workshop. Again, a great strategic planning morning. I really want to thank staff. I thought it was well run, well organized, and I think we're making good progress. On January 31st, County Administrator Vermillion and I met with Chris Meyer, Mayor of Belle Plaine, down at Emma Crumby's. January 31st was a very cold day. I think I clocked the temperature at -32 that morning on my way to Belle Plaine. But a good meeting, good discussions with Belle Plaine on a number of issues dealing with roads, sewers, housing, really talking about some efficient sharing of resources, maybe with building inspections and things like that. So more to come on that issue. In the afternoon was in the center for the ditch board. I do think the ditch board meetings are very interesting. We're doing some redetermination of benefits, voted to consolidate 2 ditches. So now, we had 3 ditches with LeSueur County. We're going to be down to 2. Sad for me, happy for you guys. A good meeting, and we did have many Scott County folks there. That evening, I attended the Canterbury Park relaunch event, well-attended event. I think Commissioner Wolf was there also. He forgot to say that. February 1st, our breakfast with legislatures. Last evening, I enjoyed a 2018 wrap-up meeting with the Scott County pork producers at Mr. Pigstuff. The report was last summer they sold 10,540 pork burgers around the county, raised $13,000 that they've given to food shelves and local youth organizations. And then finally this morning, met with the new employees, was a good meeting. I do want to note also that I've started to get some of the calls about the YMCA and some of the concerns. Even if I tell them just to call Commissioner Wolf, I figure I need to listen too. So I think we're going to have to be real thoughtful and look at that matter as it comes up and see what we can do. On to County Administrator update, please.
Madam Chair, just one item for you. Just a reminder that the county offices will be closed on February 18th for the President's holiday. That is all I have today.
All right, thank you. County Attorney, do we need to recess for a meeting?
We do not, but I just want to make a plug. As you all know, I've got the Choose Not to Use Anti-Drug Task Force, and we run the annual fundraising golf tournament, and it's the beginning of February, and we are basically a handful of teams away from being full for that tournament. So thank you to the community for your support in that, and also a reminder to anyone, if you want to have a team, you better sign up quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great day. Following this meeting, the county board will meet in workshop setting to receive a building project update. Any other further business to come before this body?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn this meeting. Any discussion? If not, if you're in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. We are adjourned. All right.